All right.
Good morning, everybody. So this is Hillary Hedges Rayport, Chair of the Nantucket Historical Commission. We have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our agenda. The meeting is going to be recorded, so please remember that anything that you broadcast could be captured by the recording. I'm going to go ahead and confirm all the members are here, and we have some extra guests. And just to note that all of the votes at this meeting are going to be taken by roll call vote. So first, the commissioners, could you just confirm that you can hear me when I call your name? David Silver.
Present.
Thank you. Mickey Rowland.
Here.
Tom Montgomery.
Here.
Angus McLeod.
Here.
Clement Dirks.
Here. And I hear you.
Okay, great. We are expecting Georgia Raisman to join, and we are also expecting Susan Handy, but joining at 10:30. And then we also have staff, Holly Bacchus.
Present.
And we have guests, Mary Longacre and Vince Murphy.
Good morning.
Hi, and
Morning.
Johnson from Arcadis.
Morning, everyone.
Hi, terrific. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We do have public comment on our agenda. Is there anybody here from who would like to take public comment, wanted to make a public comment for items not on our agenda? Okay, I don't see any. We have 3 sets of minutes in our packet. Could I have a motion or any comments for requested changes to the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, second.
Second.
Thank you, Angus. All in favor, David? Oh, it looks like we might have lost David. Okay, I'll start with Mickey.
Aye.
Thank you. Clement?
Aye.
David, do you approve the minutes that you prepared?
I do. Aye.
Thank you. And I am also an aye to approve the minutes. So those are approved. All right. So we have, moving on, we have a few announcements. Holly, did you want to say something about the resiliency guidelines?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So last 2 weeks ago, I can't remember now, we had our HDC review the draft design guidelines for Resilient Nantucket. And we're planning on having another draft actually next Friday, same exact, we're looking at 11 o'clock. I have posted those meetings also for you as the Historical Commission if you want to attend, so I can still do that for next week's meeting. Your participation obviously is appreciated, especially those of you that are also with the HDC advisory boards, much appreciated. So that's about the resiliency guidelines. We're still working on those, but we're moving forward and very appreciative.
Yeah, it's great to see it happening. And I hope that I did attend part of the meeting. Unfortunately, the timing was difficult for me, so I had to leave, but there's a recording. And, you know, these guidelines are really of great interest to this commission. So I hope everyone will take a chance to review the guidelines and give comments, because once they are accepted, they will be what we are living with. And thank you, Holly, for organizing that effort. Vineyard Wind is back at the table. Holly, can you tell us something about that?
So yes, briefly, the change with the new presidency, new administration, they have resubmitted their COP general permit to BOEM. And basically, long story short, when it comes to Vineyard Wind Section 1, we have a good neighbor agreement with them. So any consultation is advised not from our special counsel. So that was more or less, I think, a notice coming from BOEM that they really shouldn't have provided. I'm actually happy they did, so we can see the transparency. But no frets will be a part of the consultation process for future sections of Vineyard Wind, and also new companies that are coming through that review process with.
Okay, thank you. And Tom Montgomery has graciously volunteered to continue to be our point person on Vineyard Wind, but as we have this good neighbor agreement and we have counsel to represent the National Historic Landmark and protect it from any adverse effects, or at least mitigate any adverse effects going forward, we're in good shape, or at least we are exercising our rights and our due diligence. So just to remind everybody, there was a settlement agreement. I think it was funding a $4 million fund that would be held at the Community Foundation. But my understanding is that because the turbines had to change, the whole process has been taking so long that the technology is really advanced and they're able to have fewer turbines. So they're reconfiguring the turbines, but it was a material enough change that they had to start this whole process over again. Is that an accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
They pulled, yes. And of course, also politics do play a role in that. And they pulled it at the end of the last presidency and brought it back forth. Yes.
Okay. All right, great. I had an announcement, which is I included an overview in the packet about a course being an online course. It's 4 Wednesdays in the month of March, being offered by Historic Deerfield. And it's on vernacular architecture of New England. We have a lot of this on Nantucket. I've signed up for the course. I think it's like $25 per lecture, but of course you have to buy 4 of them. I got a student rate because I'm now a student, but I'm really looking forward to it. I invite all of you to join me. And I think, you know, it's hard sometimes to get educated about the very narrow focus that we have on Nantucket. And I think there are a lot of similarities with Deerfield, so in the period and the type of architecture. So I just wanted to be sure everybody knew about that as an educational opportunity. Are there any other announcements? Okay, hearing none. Terrific. So we have the Coastal Resiliency Consultant Arcadis on to hear our comments, talk a little bit about the project. So I'll turn it over to Mary, Vince, and Trevor.
Thanks, everybody. I'll introduce myself and I'll let Vince introduce himself. And I'm sure many of you know Mary, but also open the floor up to her as well. So my name is Trevor Johnson. I am with Arcadis, which is the consulting firm that's been hired by the town of Nantucket to lead the coastal resilience planning process. We are a large engineering and design firm based in the Netherlands, globally, and a significant presence here in the United States. We do have a specialized kind of practice in coastal resilience and water management, and so are very excited to be here working with the community on Nantucket and bringing that expertise to you all. And I think we've had a lot of conversations so far across a number of committees and boards and organizations, as well as town staff here. And we held our first open house on January 28th. That was well attended. Hopefully some of you were in the virtual room, so to speak. And our kind of ramping up for our midterm mid-project progress report that'll be coming out at the end of March, early April timeframe. That'll speak to the kind of risk and hazard assessment, as well as what we've learned from the community engagement process so far, and evaluation of existing conditions. So that's the high-level summary of where we stand in the project. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review the video of the presentation on the project from the Conservation Commission, if you didn't have a chance to attend any of the other meetings that we've presented at. But yeah, happy to be here and happy to answer any questions, as well as, you know, really interested in hearing folks' kind of priorities and perspectives on what you think is most important for us to know, and what you would like to see out of the coastal resilience planning process. So I'll turn it over to Vince now to cover anything that I missed.
No, Trevor, you didn't miss anything. I'm Vince Murphy. I'm the Coastal Resilience Coordinator. I work for the town in the Natural Resources Department. I'm the staff liaison to the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, and Mary can talk more on that front. And I, for planning purposes, I'm the project manager on the town side that works closely with Trevor so that we can coordinate the development of the Coastal Resilience Plan. By all means, I can be a contact person and a point person on behalf of the town to get any concerns or any views now or later as the plan develops, get those to Arcadis. I work very closely with Holly on other planning efforts, everything from my little part of the Resilient Nantucket Designs for Adaptation, just helping review sections of it so that it can match up with the Coastal Resilience Plan and vice versa. And with that, I will turn it to Mary.
Good morning, everyone. Mary Longacre, Chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, and I have attended meetings here before and will attend in the future to help share information between the two committees.
Terrific, thanks. So I hope everybody had a chance to see the past presentations. I didn't want to ask Trevor to give his presentation again. I think he's probably given it 18 times throughout the town of Nantucket, and then many of that, thanks to our Zoom meetings, has been recorded. So I just want to open up the floor for folks to ask questions and give comments. Does anybody want to, this is our opportunity to have our interests heard and incorporated into the plan. So would anybody like to go first? I can, while you guys think about what you want to contribute, I can make a few comments. So one comment is, if you could add, this commission is about 1.5 years old, so not everybody has always known about us, and I know you prepared your plan some time ago. So just if you could add us to the list in your presentations of, stakeholders and interested parties, because I think it was Angus pointed out that we weren't on that list, so that would be terrific. I had a comment from Don to Michelle, who is not wasn't able to be here today, but he did want me to pass on. Don is a seasonal resident, and a lot of this planning is happening in the off season. I know, I know it's Zoom, which is terrific, so people can really participate no matter where they are. But Don just wanted to be sure that there were some efforts being made specifically to reach seasonal residents, especially because a lot of the people who own those most vulnerable coastal front properties are seasonal residents. So, homeowners associations, maybe the Nantucket Yacht Club. I presume you're reaching out to those folks, but I just wanted to mention it.
Yep. Yeah, we're definitely open to, very curious to hear from that particular I guess demographic or group of stakeholders, and how the most effective ways to make sure that we're getting the word out off island. So if anybody has thoughts on that, very open to hearing that. And I think the second piece is that we do hope to hold our next open house, larger community-wide convening in a month that is, I guess, more likely to have more seasonal residents on the island. It probably won't be July, because that's pretty late in our project schedule, but currently kind of looking at a May-June timeframe. So hopefully that'll provide an opportunity for more seasonal residents to participate in the process directly.
Okay.
If I could just add just a tiny bit to that, if that's okay, Hilary. We're also in an unfortunate position that one of the committee members on CRAC represents the advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers. So we have a pretty substantial cohort caught in that group, which is always terrific. Non-island residents by their very nature. The other thing is a company called Iris have developed an app, and this is just being launched. It's going through a bit of a soft launch phase at the moment. The app can be downloaded, and anyone and everyone can give feedback through the app at any time, on site and to very specific locations using the GPS function on your phone. So we're going to be promoting that a hell of a lot more in the next couple of weeks.
And I
That's
just
great.
posted. Oh, sorry. I just posted the links
ahead.
to those apps, to the app stores where you can download Iris to your phones in the chat. So definitely encourage folks to do so, and to tell your friends, neighbors, and family about it as well.
That is cool. So is
sorry, Heather, the great thing about the app is it not only frees people from being on or off island, but it means you can participate at any time in the process, not just at an event that is scheduled, that perhaps is not convenient or that you missed. So the app is 24/7.
So just to clarify, this is an app that helps the CRAC committee and the consultant collect community feedback. So an alternative would be we email you, but this is sort of a richer, more organized way to do it.
Yeah, it's a little bit more organized. It comes to us. We can track the feedback. Currently there's a survey that's live, which is meant to be redundant with the questions that were asked during the open house. So those that couldn't attend the open house have a chance to provide the same feedback that was requested of participants in the breakout sessions. So and then we'll be using the app, as well to publicize events, any news that is related to the Coastal Resilience Plan or other resilience efforts on the island. And then, later in the project, we'll also have additional surveys that will be launched.
Okay. I have some additional specific feedback. So I'm sure you've seen our report that this commission published on Harbor Place.
Yes.
And how much that intersects with your objectives, and we appreciated along the way Mary and Vince's comments on that report. But an important next step that was recommended in that report was the updating of Nantucket's Nantucket and Mattocket Harbor's municipal harbor plan. And I was very happy to see that the Natural Resources Department has requested funds in the budget for next year to update the harbor plan. So that plan is really going to be a key way for Nantucket to direct development activity in certain coastal properties where they exist on filled tidelands, or where they offer access to tidelands. And one of the ideas that resonated a lot with me, and I have a high level of interest in, and I think other people on this commission share, is what will happen with the parking lot, the current public parking lot, which is it's in private ownership, but it is mostly on a Commonwealth tideland, I believe. So it is held in the public trust, and it's currently, impermeable hard surface used for parking, but there are other areas potentially that could be used for parking. And especially with the power of a municipal harbor plan, as development continues, the Department of Environmental Protection could be directed to turn that into some kind of absorbing material, some kind of living coastline. I mean, we would defer to you for what the best adaptation would be of these filled tidelands, as we start to see more and more the persistent effects of sea level rise and climate change, storm surge. But the municipal harbor plan is going to be a great way to do that, and a great way to protect our historic downtown.
Yeah, that's great insight, and I think perspective, and I would agree. I'm glad that the MHP planning process is going to come after the CRP recommendations are out, because the MHP will be an important way to begin to implement, from a regulatory perspective, some of the recommendations. that come out of the CRP for resilience and adaptation approaches for that area and other areas of the island
Mhm.
as
Great.
applicable.
Great. Well, I hope that I'm really glad to see this is all being led under the Natural Resources Department. So your work and the harbor plan will be coordinated. And I do hope that it's looped in with the Planning Commission, because it is a planning function. And we can't help but have, silos and different commissions, but we should have ways to coordinate and achieve collective goals and keep people updated.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Feedback, concerns? Yes, Angus.
Thank you all, Mary, Vincent, and Trevor for presenting today. I feel like this is the fourth time I've seen you on the screen because I watched all the videos. My primary interests are in the specifics of what the plans and strategies are. A lot of strategies were discussed, but not specifics of what is actually the thought would be the plan for us specifically. So I'm anxious to see what those suggestions are. When I think about coastal resiliency, for some reason, I just like target in on the Thomas Macy warehouse, Lower Main Street, historic buildings, what's going to happen. I know there's Brant Point, there's Nantucket, there's all over the place, but that's the area I'm thinking about and what the strategies are for doing that. So I think my main comments will be when there are more specifics that are brought to the table. But
Yeah.
thank you for all your efforts. This is obviously a dire need.
Can I ask a question of that, Angus?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not at the stage yet where we're ready to make recommendations for particular solutions. We kind of that is driven by the community input and by our risk analysis in part. And I think one of the questions I'm really interested in hearing about from different viewpoints is just sort of the what types of solutions might be on or off the table. If we came out with a certain type of approach for, let's say, downtown or Brant Point or Nantucket or elsewhere, is there something that you would just say, no, that won't work. We won't accept that here because of XYZ, principles or values that we hold dear on Nantucket. So I think that's critical information for us to start to glean from the community, and maybe to provide like a direct example. As you know, the downtown area is very vulnerable to coastal flooding, and there are only a set number of potential solutions. There's kind of at a high level the kind of coastal defense, which often involves barriers to flooding, keeping the water out, protecting the buildings and the infrastructure. And then there are kind of longer term adaptations that could involve retreat or elevation of land above predicted flood levels. And then there are kind of building scale approaches, right? And adaptations that can happen to individual buildings that reduce risk, but don't keep the water out, kind of more living with water approaches. So I'm curious to hear kind of the commission's perspective on are any of those approaches major red flags from your perspective? You wouldn't want to see barriers in downtown to keep the water out, for example.
Thanks for that, Trevor. Personally, I think I would have to see what the options really look like specifically. What do the barriers look like? What does it look like to raise the structures? And then there's the fallback of making it sort of wet flood proof, where the flood comes in and it goes out, and like we're not destroying electric or plumbing or any of the infrastructure of the building, but just allowing it to flood. Obviously, our concerns are about the historic character and just the character of the streetscape that we have now, and that that could dramatically change if we're talking about retreat raising grade. But it would be, I think I wouldn't say nothing. I wouldn't say anything is specifically off the table for me. I want to see what each of those scenarios looks like, as best as can be defined.
Good. I mean, I think that's very helpful just to hear that, I think what I heard was the design matters a lot. It's not every potential solution is the same. It matters how it's integrated within the existing fabric of the built environment, which we certainly agree with. And then secondly, I think just knowing that there's no lines in the sand at this stage, I think is very important for our team to understand. Not every community is as open and potentially flexible as I think we're learning about Nantucket. I know when we get into the details that things will be a little different, but it's good to know at this stage.
It is all about the details.
Yeah.
If I can jump in for a second, I attended Holly's Resilient Nantucket meeting with the HTC last week, and there seemed to be several people who had the opinion that we can't just leave flooding adaptation to individual properties, that there has to be a wider solution. And that's the exact area where I think the input from this commission and from the HDC is really important, to set that line, if nothing else, that we can't just let people do it all by themselves. There has to be some sort of coordinated, more universal effort. And again, what that looks like, what that design will be, that's a whole different question. But I think that was something that I heard as a sort of line in the sand, that leaving everybody up to their own devices is not acceptable. That's what I heard at the HTC. And Holly, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Actually, what I would like to do, just in the interest of time, I just want to make sure we hear from everybody. And I know a lot of people want to speak. So Mary has just made a really interesting statement about this decision about, do we leave it up to individual homeowners, or do we have some kind of a policy? I'd love to just kind of go around the room and hear people's comments. If you could try to keep your comments brief, but address that question. Nikki, I see your hand up.
Yes. It's what I find interesting is that we've talked a lot about individual houses and raising buildings and flood proofing and waterproofing. I haven't heard a lot yet about what happens with the roadways, the network of streets and sidewalks. And I think to some degree that will help drive movement. If are we going to have to raise like Easy Street or New Whale Street, or what happens down there? Does some areas that eventually get flooded, do they just become a series of wooden piers because we just really can't completely raise everything? But once decisions like that are made or directions are given, that I think will help drive individual property owners to help determine what they do with their properties, to help do it sort of in unison.
That's a great point. Georgia, I saw that you had your hand up.
Yeah, I live in Sconset, so I know that Arcadis met recently with the Beach Preservation Fund. And I mean, talking about individual owners not taking things into their own hands. And the owners on Baxter Road have had to do this themselves for the last almost 20 years. And their solutions are not ones that are, excuse me, universally applauded on island. And although I personally think that they've been doing what they've had to do, at least to fend off the solution for the last 20 years, the next 15 or 20 years, a temporary solution. So I don't know whether you can really say that individual owners should not be left to their own devices, because in their case, left to their own devices, their houses wouldn't be here now. And their situation was perhaps more acute even than the Easy Street situation is. So they did what they had to do, or what they thought they had to do in the near term. On the other hand, I'm also interested in the fact that Arcadis comes from a country that has had centuries of bulking up physically against the encroachment of the North Sea. So, where do we get off telling people that you can't do a physical barrier against the ocean? It's just not, it's not in the genetics of people to say, well, let Mother Nature have her way. We wouldn't have any kind of bulwarks. We wouldn't be dredging the harbor. We wouldn't have any kind of way to get in and out of Nantucket if we didn't meddle with Mother Nature on a regular basis. So I think there are lots of different ways of approaching this, but taking the kind of go back to letting everything happen the way Mother Nature will let it happen is certainly not a good solution. And yet that is what I hear from a lot of local supporters of, well, let's say local objectors. And I think that's what we have to be prepared to deal with, that kind of objection. I don't know whether Arcadis has heard this or not, because I don't know who they're listening to yet, but that's what I hear to the ground.
Thank you, Georgia. Other commissioners who wanted to make comment? Yes, Clement.
Yeah, I'd also like Georgia in Sconset, and I know the SBPF has done what they've done, but in talking about Mickey's knowledge of streets, I mean, we might lose the end of Baxter Road and access to Sankaty Lighthouse. And these are very important parts of the whole island of Nantucket. So, you know, I know Arcadis is focusing on an island-wide solution. I mean, obviously you have to look at all the different parts of the island, but I understood from the SBPF that Arcadis was looking first at Sconset, and we're going to make some kind of a recommendation for Sconset first before looking at the whole island. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, Trevor, Vince, and Mary. So I'd love to hear about that. Obviously, I'm selfishly out here on the eastern end. Thanks.
Vince, did you want to respond?
I think I could probably respond to that. I don't want to discount this in any way. It's not the point of why we're here today. We're here to talk about the Coast Resilience Plan. But yes, there is a separate plan for the Baxter Road area. It's an engineering project. The easiest way to look at it is you have to go back in time a little bit. There's been 3 different lots of money appropriated for some similar sounding and similar actions of sorts. In 2015, there was, I think it was in the ballpark of $500,000 put aside a town budget for facilities on Baxter Road. That was mainly for sewer network, water, that kind of thing. In 2019, there was 2 different things on the budget together. There was $550,000 for the Coast Resilience Plan, which is why we're here today. And then there was another separate $500,000 set aside just for Baxter Road separately. And that has now started in earnest and is going to use a lot of the same information and facilities that Arcadis has already set up. And we're going to try and have these run in tandem in order to have a unified outcome of sorts. I hope that helps and that understanding the funding sources provides some background of how the town and select board ended up making the decisions of Coast Resilience Plan and separately a decision for Baxter Road.
Okay. Any other commissioners wanted to give comments on this topic of, you know, overall arching plans versus individual property level responses, or things that we absolutely can't live with or really would like to see in the plan? We haven't heard from Tom or David.
Well, I'll just say, I think Angus, for me, pretty much said it. I know the Arcadis people need feedback from us in the town, and that's kind of what I'm hearing. But in order for us to make any, you know, real judgments on where we're going with this, we do kind of need to hear some of the things they might come up with to answer some of the problems. And so it's like a catch-22. They need it from us, but we need it from them.
Okay, thank you, Tom. David?
Yeah, can you guys hear me all right? I kind of have
Yes.
an unstable internet connection. Great. So I really appreciated Mary's comment. Didn't quite think about it like that, you know, as a collective whole versus the individual homeowner. And I think it's important that we work together on this. So I would like to see a level of collaboration and stick-to-itiveness with this project moving forward. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank
Great.
you to Trevor and Mary and Vincent as well.
Thank you, David. You know, one thing that I think might be helpful is if we could, it might be helpful to think about this in terms of timeframes. So one analogy that comes to mind from Nantucket's past is, you know, when the harbor was starting to silt up and the whaling ship, it was no longer a deep water port, and Nantucket was losing its whaling industry. And so some ingenious folks invented the camels, which is basically a floating dry dock that would lift ships over the sandbar. And the idea was that with this technological intervention, you know, Nantucket could continue whaling. And that was quite amazing. It only lasted a couple of years, and eventually nature won out, and the whales, we were killing all the whales anyway. So, you know, ultimately the whaling industry did collapse. And I don't mean to say like, see, this is all gonna just end and we should give up. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I think, you know, you need to, when you look at a solution, you also have to say, is this like a Band-Aid? Is it a permanent solution, or is it not possible to have a permanent solution? And what do we, you know, what are we doing in 5 years? What are we doing in 10 years? What are we doing in 50 years? And I think like as you come up with solutions, you know, putting that sort of longer range or phased view could be really helpful to the community. You know, it's really easy. I don't happen to own a home that's in a flood zone, so it's easy for me to say that I don't want to see houses popping up really high. But, you know, I might feel differently if I owned a home in the flood zone. Nonetheless, we are a preservation planning group, and I think we always have to start with what are we really trying to preserve, and how do we acknowledge that essence of what we're trying to preserve, because if we have interventions that sacrifice the whole of the historic character of Nantucket and the feeling of the town, we haven't achieved our mission of preserving historic Nantucket. I know individual homeowners have different priorities potentially, or conflict among priorities, but as a commission, that I think should be our priority. And I guess personally, since everyone has had a chance to say, you know, what they're thinking individually, I have a lot of concerns about how having homes highly elevated, how that affects our integrity as a historic town. And I would also like to recognize that we have a land bank on this town that has tremendous resources, and we have a lot of reserved land. So if we are becoming smaller as an island, we have to think about, you know, what resources of land we have and what financial resources we have for preserving land. I know these are complicated issues, so I'm just sort of flagging them for continued collaborative discussion. And I think those are my comments.
Hillary, thanks for that. I feel like that's a really insightful perspective to be thinking short-term, long-term, what helps us, you know, get over the sandbar, as it were. This is a camel moment here.
Yeah, or just say, you know what, the sand is coming, and this is really what this island is about. I mean, I'm more in the camp of figuring out how to live with water. I think it's going to be a longer term, more satisfying solution. So if there aren't, I don't know if Arcadis, if you're, and Vince and Mary, if you want to make any other comments, but unless there are any other comments from the group, we might move on. Or Holly, did you want to make some final comments here?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As the town's preservation planner and local hazard mitigation plan coordinator, working closely with Vince, our coastal resiliency advisory coordinator, And Mary, as the chair of the advisory committee, I just wanted to say that through this starting of the process of creating our design guidelines, Resilient Nantucket, as well as the Coastal Resiliency Plan, these two projects were created with preservation in mind. The overlap of preservation is very, very important. And quite frankly, that's why Arcadis was chosen. They understand that, they grasp that, and so much as actually has one of our consultants as one of their co-consultants for the Coastal Resiliency Plan. I want you all as our preservation commissioners to realize the importance of that and that they do grasp that concept. Also, how important that our Resilient Nantucket design guidelines are very important to really take a look at right now. You're talking about what these structures are going to look like. And that's what our consultant is doing, showing us how these design guidelines fit into the Secretary of Interior standards for adaptation, what we as Nantucket want to see. So think of that on the individual basis. So that way the HDC can actually look at a historic structure and say, okay, they're actually accommodating accordingly, not just having to abide by all of FEMA's requirements of their 50% or more, whatnot. And I will tell you that being a National Historic Landmark, being this close to being a CLG, all of that helps. If we don't look at the fact that most of our structures that are in the flood zone are historic, then why have this conversation? So that's good. That's a great thing. So I encourage you all to take a look at the draft if you haven't. Your input is very important, and you'll see how that is actually going to correlate into the Coastal Resiliency Plan and figure out what exactly we're going to do for these downtown areas. Are we going to be elevating roads? There are priorities within our hazard mitigation plan that call for elevated roads. This is where we as an island, as a county, are going to be looking at our National Historic Landmark and saying, how do we want to accommodate for sea level rise and rising seas together? So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Those are really excellent comments, and we're really lucky, frankly, to have all of this moving forward in place. And I'd like to put a further point on that. I'd like to assign everyone the homework of carefully reading this draft, these draft guidelines. If you don't know where to find them, you can get them from Holly, but let's not miss this opportunity to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. I really don't. I think it would be very sad if, we look back and said, why is this happening? And we were just here and we didn't have, we didn't actually really look at it closely. Mary has her hand up.
For the benefit of the committee, so one of the goals of the Coastal Resilience Plan is to tell us about that time frame perspective. What needs to be done in 10 years? Will that same accommodation last until 30 years or until the end of the century? So we are definitely looking at multiple time frames, and it's understood by the people developing it that solutions will not be implemented today that will be needed not until 50 years from now. The solutions will evolve over time as sea level rises, as the situation evolves over time. And I had one more point about time, and I've probably forgotten it, so I apologize. Shoot, well, back to you, Hillary.
Okay, well, thank you. I hope you felt like you've gotten some good feedback from our commission, and I'm really excited to work with you. I'm grateful that we're doing this planning to protect our lovely island as best we can. So thanks very much, and you're welcome to stay.
Thank you all as well.
And participate in our meeting if you like. But now I think we're going to move on to hear from Holly about the survey grant. So terrific news. Holly got everything off as planned, even though it required running around the island to get original signatures on documents in time to get everything in the mail. She's probably chasing the FedEx truck. But it got to Massachusetts Historical Commission on time. So our grant is being considered. And when Holly, Angus, and I met to do some agenda planning last week, we talked about, some of the things that we could do to really hit the ground running, because we have to go through an RFP process, which is governed by procurement law and is specific. It will be managed by Holly. But we want to compress the time that it takes to do that procurement so that we have as much time possible to get our work done, because we have to complete the work in a year. So Holly, do you want to comment on that?
I'm on my iPad, my apologies. Yes, so I did run around, got it in the mail, got it to them, they've received it. So obviously we're waiting for that final word. It goes hand in hand with our CLG, which was being forwarded off to the National Park Service. So hopefully we'll hear something well on that. Both the coordinators at the state level at MHC are working together. They're actually making sure that they're both in the same process, because we all know that we've been accepted into this round as a CLG, which is fantastic. So clap everybody for that. Yes, so my goal is to provide a timeline for all of us. I have not done that yet, but I plan on doing that along with our scope and getting that paperwork ready. I do have to coordinate with finance. Finance obviously has to make sure that we meet the appropriate procurement laws. But having that document ready to go, as Hillary alluded to, is the first and foremost thing to get done. So that way we can get it through the procurement process, get it posted on the town's website, and hopefully we'll get some great feedback. I do also want to let the commission know that due to the procurement and process, and I know if Mary Longacre was still on the call, she'd allude to this, but the procurement process does not allow committee or commission or board members to be involved with that. It's all internal staff. So for instance, myself and Vince and a couple other staff members were involved with the reviewing of multiple fantastic RFPs that came in for the Coastal Resiliency Plan. And we go through a kind of round robin table review through specific criteria that is required through the procurement process, which is all FOIA-able to see how that came about. But I'm letting you know that process is something that's going to be very similar. Hopefully we get a lot. And I don't know about you all, but I'm very excited because again, this is going to be a multi-year process, phased approach. And the fact that, you know, Nantucket, we are so unique. We have so many things that are available to us, being a National Historic Landmark, being a CLG, hopefully. There are so many aspects that will be able to, the fact that we have a CPC, the funding process, that is actually going to be something that we'll also be able to go after as well, because we all realize that the National Historic Landmark, being the entire island in our two little sister islands, is a lot of property to look at and grasp. And I think that goes back to why Nantucket is pretty much the busiest historic district commission in the country, and that's per preservation folks at the national level. So good stuff. Again, I hope to have everything ready to show you a scope and a timeline moving forward.
Yes, thank you, Holly. Tom has his hand up.
I'd like to thank you and Holly for all the work that you've done, not only on the MHC grant and the CLG thing. I mean, it's huge. And because I'm here on Nantucket and it's February and it's snowy and it's lousy and it's not a lot of outside stuff going on, I've taken the opportunity to drive around through the fish lofts, and I'll tell you, it's an exciting thing. I mean, we've really picked a bullseye here to do this on, because practically, not every, but almost every house there, no matter what side of the streets you go and you drive up and down, they've all either got a plaque or a sign of some sort describing a little bit about the house. And we've got our work cut out for us for sure. But when we get this done, this is going to be quite a project. I'm really excited about it.
Thank you, Tom. I couldn't agree more. I mean, getting the island surveyed and really surveying the whole island is going to be so critical for continued preservation of our historic structures and our national landmarks. So Holly, I just want to confirm that for the preparation of the RFP, so you're going to prepare the RFP based on the scope of our grant, right? And we're going to check with the MHC to make sure that we have the phases of the grant right, because we kind of ended up winging that a little bit at the end, because our grant proposal is a hybrid between a survey plan and a survey of one neighborhood. So can you bring that to the commission and we can sort of look through it and make sure, just in terms of collaboration and communication? Okay.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to make sure that this scope, meets both what our finance department requires for the procurement law process, but also MHC. Make sure we check out every box, if you will. And yes, when we get that draft ready to go, then I will bring this commission. I do also just want to mention that I don't want to jump the gun, so to speak. I want to hear back from MHC. Hopefully we'll hear something here shortly. But yes, definitely get the ball rolling on that.
Okay. So do you think that's something for our March meeting? I mean, we won't have our budget yet, obviously, but we will know if we've gotten the grant.
Yeah, hopefully we'll hear something from them. That would be great. Yep, we all realize that town meeting has been pushed to June. For those of us that are able to be on Nantucket and vote. So of course that's, they're waiting for that. And as you're well aware, Hillary, the MHC seemed to be very understanding and accommodating with that whole process.
Yes, but we will hear at the beginning, I think it's March 9th or something, that they will, we'll hear. But what I'm asking, Holly, is could we expect to be able to review the RFP and kind of be all okay, sign off on it at our March meeting?
I will do my best to have something before you on the March 19th. I cannot make promises though.
Yeah,
but I will do my best.
All right, thank you, Holly. Basically, this whole effort has resulted in a massive expansion of the work Holly needs to do. So we're grateful for that. Okay, so moving on. Holly, could you let me share my screen, or maybe I can already? Here we are. Okay. I just wanted to pull up the objectives and key results because we have people in our meeting who where are the objectives and key results? Here we go. Okay, can you see our objectives and key results, everyone? Okay, we have people in this meeting that weren't present at our last meeting. So this is what we approved. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the work I've done, and I've talked with Holly and Angus in our agenda planning meeting about. So we have two objectives. One is increased protection of historic resources by town administration and all elected leaders. And the second one is increased support for preservation among key associations and the broadly defined public. And we have these, individual objectives underneath. And we can talk about any of these, answer questions, have a discussion about any of these now. I wanted to talk a little bit about NHC evaluates and creates a plan to reach home builders and realtors. So one of the things that has been on my mind recently has been sustainability and reuse. And also, one of the things we flagged when we were talking about our survey plan was the question of the more recent buildings, including buildings that, aren't necessarily historic. So we talked about creating some kind of preservation is always about saving buildings because of some theoretical basis, some idea. It has to be, there has to be a theory of why you're preserving. It's not just save, it's here, don't let it go away. It's there has to be some kind of a theoretical framework that causes us to advocate for preservation of a structure. So I was talking with a very successful and well-established builder who's been building homes on Nantucket for 30 years. And we were just talking about these more recent buildings because he's starting to see some beautifully constructed buildings that he built in the 1980s, post and beam construction. And they're being demolished, they're not protected. And he was very interested in, reuse. He shared how difficult it is, just as a builder with a conscience, throwing terrific building materials in the dumpster, getting rid of fixtures. These aren't historic materials, but what I wanted, I'm really talking about two things. One, I'm talking about buildings that, we have this idea of the 50-year rule. So buildings that might be from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and thinking about how we might want to develop a theoretical framework for understanding which of those should be preferably preserved, and we would want to advocate for their preservation. But then there's this whole other angle, which is reuse and sustainability. So I just wanted to hear from this group, especially given our goal of working with the Builders Association and the Realtors, if there would be, what you all thought, if there would be any energy on potentially working on some kind of a program to keep materials on island or otherwise advocate for their reuse. The category that could be kept on island would be truly historic materials. So, we don't want to see historic homes being gutted. It is happening. It will continue to happen. Would there be a way to have these, building materials, which are, they're including 18th century mantles and doorways and bricks, keeping them on the island, creating some kind of reuse or salvage location. Additionally, buildings that aren't historic, fixtures that aren't historic, could we help promote an effort to find some kind of way to reuse these stuff? It could be like in Boston, there's the Boston Building Reuse, and people can go and shop for building materials that have been salvaged, and it's a nonprofit. There's also organizations on the Cape. I'm sure there's salvage organizations on the Cape where, they're taking these materials that maybe people on Nantucket don't want, but other people want. So, some of this people might legitimately say that's really not part of the Historical Commission's mission. So I wanted, but I think it's probably something we all care about. So I want to open up the floor. I want to hear about everyone's comments on this idea of sustainability and reuse as a program to do some more work on, right? Do some more work on and work with the Builders Association. I see lots of hands. So I'm going to just go around. Okay, Tom is in my upper right corner and has his hand up. Tom.
I could see, I think that's an excellent suggestion and an idea. And I could see for lack of a better term that we all would understand, a Nantucket mall for builders that I guarantee you a lot of guys like me would definitely go there and utilize something like that for sure. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. If you take some of these 18th century houses, and the floorboards are 22, 24 inches wide. I mean, people would use those as floorboards again, or make a cabinet or something else out of it for sure. One of the best things I used to do with a board like that was made what's called a 6-board box. And all it is a coffee table, but you can put something in it. and you're making it out of something with real old wood. You use iron nails and stuff like that, and you would never know that it wasn't, I mean, if you do it right, that it wasn't the real thing. I think it's an excellent idea.
Thank you, Tom. Georgia has her hand up.
Hillary, this was something that we were trying very hard to promote about 18 years ago at the Preservation Trust. It is a fabulous idea. I think the Nantucket Mall idea is if we could possibly get either somewhere near the landfill or maybe some land from the land bank. I know the land bank is being approached for every possible use these days, but it seems to me that there's a great, even now, there's a much greater push for sustainability and reuse than there was 20 years ago when this idea first came up. I mean, why throw away historic mantles? And why throw away historic door frames and windows? By all means, I think we should get behind it. And I think the Preservation Trust would be a great ally in doing this. I think it's too bad Mary Bergman isn't on this call.
Well, Mary actually is here.
I'm here and I've had my hand up.
I'm glad you are, Mary. This is something that will resonate with a lot of old time Preservation Trust people.
Any other, Mary, I'm going to ask to hear from you. Are there any other commissioners that want to speak? Maybe some people want to speak against this idea and feel it's like not something we should be doing. Susan?
I actually also sit on the board of Sustainable Nantucket, and I think this is something that we should try to encourage them. I've been working with them for years, and excuse me, I'm almost off the board, but after 8 years or so, but you know, it is a great focus for them, and they've been working with the land bank in acquiring some rights on their property, so they're familiar with the process, and so that's a possibility. And I would also just like to say that, you know, when I got here in 1983, this was something that builders used to do on their own. They just used to, you know, not hoard, but they would, you know, reuse all kinds of things. And they would, you know, ask others, friends of theirs, to save, you know, old windows that maybe the window was broken, but you could take some of the lights out of it and keep those, and, you know, things like that. So it is a tradition on Nantucket, and it's something you could, you know, definitely play off of and, you know, start to encourage again.
Okay, great. Thank you, Susan. And that's wonderful. I didn't know we had that connection to Sustainable Nantucket because I've been thinking about them a lot. So I might follow up with you on that. Angus.
Yeah, the Nantucket Mall idea would be great in the spirit of doing things as cheaply and quickly as possible. Instead of dismantling houses, they're generally cut into the easiest pieces to throw into a dumpster, or they're just knocked down with a bulldozer. So it's a different thing to take things apart in such a way that that architectural elements can actually be preserved and reused. So I think that would be where we would want to specify guidelines of, if you are going to be taking a historic building down, and every week at the HDC we're seeing applications for demolition, partial demolition, total demolition of historic buildings, that should be in place.
Okay. All right, so guidelines. Mary?
Yes, thank you. This is something that I am very interested in, and I'm very glad to hear the support of at least one of my board members on this call, former board member at NPT. I just put a link in the chat to a group that's in Savannah called Repurpose Savannah. They deconstruct buildings instead of demolish them. I think that would be, there's a deconstruction ordinance in Portland, Oregon, if you really wanted to go all the way. I don't see that happening here yet. I've had an exploratory conversation with Graham at the DPW about this. I do think the DPW will be they're a partner. I've been trying to do a little bit more research because I think there is, you know, I know that, I'm sorry Marty left the call because his students kind of brought this up maybe 2 years ago. The idea of having an architectural salvage, and there are people who say that architectural salvage encourages demolition. I think anyone who's paying attention knows that there is almost nothing that could be done on this island to encourage demolition further than what's already being allowed. I talked to somebody in another town yesterday on the Cape who said they'd taken down 4 historic buildings in 30 years. And that really just struck me as the problem that we're facing here. So I think from a sustainability standpoint, well, first of all, I'd love to see the HDC deny demolitions of historic buildings. But if that's not going to happen, what can we do to encourage the reuse of materials? And I think having some sort of deconstruction process guidelines, whatever you want to call it, would be really great. So anything we can do to build support for that, I'd be in favor of.
Thank you, Mary. And Mary Longacre has her hand up.
I completely support the idea of the sustainable reuse of materials and the preservation of elements for their individual character, even if they're not within their original site. I can give you a little bit of a perspective from the builder's side, and that is that they are not always in control and have been accused of having a conflict of interest if they allow any materials from a house to be reused or resold or given away. When I worked for a builder, I asked about that, and he said essentially that if the owner wasn't on board with that, the builder could be accused of over ordering materials to charge to the owner so that other materials on the site could be given away or potentially sold and that money pocketed. So there is a challenge for builders to be able to do material reuse, even if they want to. It's a little bit different when the builder is the owner and the developer, they have more latitude, but when they're building for somebody else, their hands are really tied unless that owner makes that part of the project. So I'd encourage 2 things, as Angus and Mary were suggesting, to work with the HDC on demolition guidelines might be your best point of attack, but also education for purchasers, maybe working through real estate agents, that this is something that we value here on the island. The reuse of materials, keeping materials out of the landfill simply so that we don't have to either pay for their removal off island or fill up the landfill. Those are all things that people need to be educated on. They're very much in our fabric here. For those who were here 50 years ago and remember our original Nantucket Mall, there were plenty of building materials that were swiped out of there. It was just what we did. There were plenty of houses built almost entirely from reused materials. And that's something that, there are safety concerns and other issues, and the modern world doesn't make it a free-for-all the way it was. But there are builders that I see offering materials through Facebook on Nantucket consignments or through yard sales. There are builders who have warehouses of things that they've saved. And then unfortunately the warehouse gets sold and emptied out, but it is a challenge here. So I just wanted to make some of those points known to you.
Thank you, Mary. So what I'm hearing, I haven't heard anyone say well, we didn't hear from Mickey. Mickey, is there anything you wanted to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement that this is a great concept to recycle and reuse. Really not just historic material, where those are the valuable ones, but just even current modern materials that just get tossed and could have been reused elsewhere. So I think it's eventually going to come down to us establishing a system. Where do we store it? Who's doing the work? Who's managing it? And it sounds like a really great project for sustainable. If they want to get involved in it, I think that'd be fabulous. So yeah, I'm certainly in favor of it.
Okay. All right, great. So I'm hearing a lot of interest in this idea. No one's saying, well, looking at reuse for non-historic buildings is outside your remit. I mean, or rather, if you're going to do reuse for historic buildings, why not do reuse for everything is maybe the way to look at it, and to think about just the leadership we can provide for the community as a coalition of interested parties. And yeah, I would absolutely include the DPW in this, because the C&D building is it's an expense for the town. I know they charge for it, but Mary, did you want to add something else?
I did, yeah. Just a comment on what Mary Longacre was saying in regards to education. I think I could see an initiative in which there was an educational initiative to try to tell people what exactly happens. I think on Nantucket, sometimes it feels like this magic thing that you throw your trash away and it's gone. Where does it go? And people, I hear in the HDC meetings all the time, well, it's not really staying on island, it's being shipped off. So what? We're all one world. And I learned some things that, one of the reasons as to why it's hard to get a reservation, get your car off in the summertime on the ferry is because C&D trucks take up so much space. And all these things that you don't necessarily think about how it's impacting our lives.
Yeah, that's depressing.
Yeah.
So I want to share a couple other things that I've been thinking about, because I've had a bit of a head start to think about this, but I didn't want to go running away with it. And before I heard from we didn't hear from David. Oh no, we did hear from David. We did, right? David, did we hear from you? Do you want to say anything? Yeah.
I'll chime in.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I really like the initiative. I think it'd be and awesome. I mean, if we're going to, preserve historic structures and their materials, why not take materials from homes that aren't historic and reuse them? We've been doing it since, the dawn of time on Nantucket. So I don't see why we can't go back to kind of that strategy. I think getting, public awareness is kind of key. I really appreciate Mary Bergman's comments and Mary Longacre as well. I think I like the Portland ordinance. That sounds like maybe a lofty goal, but I think that that's something that probably inevitably will be adopted on Nantucket. So starting to have these conversations.
Okay.
Part of it moving forward. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, David. So a couple thoughts. One thing I learned from the builder I spoke to was that there used to be much more interest in homeowners in recycling the homes that they were wanting to get rid of, because it was much easier to take a tax deduction. So one, you could deduct the value of the home, not just the money you receive for the home. Obviously, people are getting less money for the home because these homes have to be moved. They're worth less in terms of, what people actually pay for them, because it's all in the labor and the transportation and the logistics. So they weren't able to take, as big a deduction. And then the IRS started really looking out for red flags that would put you in a pool to be more likely subject to an IRS audit. And these big charitable deductions of things other than money became one of them. So according to this builder, with the removal of the tax deduction, it was the removal of a financial incentive, and it led to people being less interested and less motivated to reuse and recycle. So my reaction to this is, well, it's good because people, if they have a motivation, are more likely to be willing to do it, which includes things that many of you said, which is it's harder to take a home apart. And I was sharing these thoughts with somebody who let me know that in Lexington, Massachusetts, at their town meeting this year, they're going to be considering an action that would add an additional fee for demolition. The reason why they want to do this is they're seeing gentrification that is making it unaffordable for some of their town employees and other people who want to live in the center of town. I mean, they're not an island. It just means people go further and further away. But they're seeing, $300,000 homes in neighborhoods filled with $300,000 homes knocked down and turned into $1.5 million homes. And so they wanted to, they're proposing to put a 3 to 7% fee for demolition. And that fee would fund the creation of additional affordable housing. So That's what they're doing in Lexington, but it made me think, you know, we could advocate at some point for a fee on demolition, which would be waived if the building was reused. So there might be some creative ways. This is total blue sky. I'm not like pushing this legislatively. I'm just, you know, sharing creative ideas around the motivation. So how do we motivate? You know, you can motivate through education, you can motivate through public shaming, peer pressure, but you can also motivate, you know, through financial incentives, the carrot and the stick. So this could be sort of a combined carrot stick where we would hope that people wouldn't pay the fee because, you know, they would be reusing. So I wanted to share that. I also wanted to share that I've thought about maybe that the WPI students could do a project on this. There's a tremendous amount of research that needs to be done. So we need research about what's actually happening with demolitions. We need research about technical aspects. So I discussed this with Lauren Sinatra, our energy coordinator, and she talked about all of the issues with recycling homes because of codes, and you know, these homes have heating systems that aren't up to code anymore. It's really technical. So it's a big project. I have a call set up with the professor at WPI who puts together these projects on Nantucket and assigns student teams. So I'm going to be speaking with him next week, and I feel like I have your endorsement to go ahead and, you know, explore this, and maybe he would like to put a student team on this. And I thought that would be a great way to we need a business plan basically, and we need partners who want to do this with us. So I think those would be some good next steps. Does anybody else have any ideas about next steps? Everybody like those ideas? Talk to WPI, and then reach out to Sustainable. And Mary is putting a chat. If it was free or lower cost to drop off materials at reuse site, yeah. So other ideas. Yes, exactly. Like Mary says, I'd like the students to look at other communities that architectural salvage programs. Yes, so that would always and look into, does architectural salvage encourage demolition? Yeah, you know, at some point we're just going to have to take a position on that. I think that's really hard to know. I think we have, I agree with what Mary said about people, they want what they want with their homes. So okay, so are we good with this topic then? Any other comments on this topic? Yeah, I see heads nodding. Okay, so we're going to move on to our section 106 review. I want to say a few comments just about section 106 review. So when the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 was signed into law, one of the key things that the government wanted to do was to stop destroying historic material in the US, you know, to stop itself from destroying historic material in the US. So in the mid 60s, there was tremendous expansion of roadways. There was, you know, through the 1949 Housing Act, urban renewal. The city of Boston, as you know, knocked down 37 acres in Boston of historic buildings and replaced them with towers, which we now have in Boston's West End. And there were similar urban renewal projects all over. So at some point, the government decided, you know what, we're actually not helping. We need to stop ourselves from destroying properties that are important to our culture. And the way they define this was properties that are on the National Register of Historic Places. So every property, whether it's old or not, on Nantucket is on the National Register of Historic Places, every square inch of the island. So any projects that have government funding, and the state has a similar program that mirrors the the Historic Preservation Act of 1966 at a state level. So anything that has state funding has to be reviewed by the Massachusetts Historical Commission to see if it has any adverse effect, and the project manager has an obligation to be aware of. So in other words, it doesn't force them to stop, but they have an obligation to be aware of. And in the case of a National Historic Landmark, they have an obligation to take the maximum effort to not have a historic, an adverse effect on a historic property. So this is why we have Section 106 reviews. The Massachusetts Historical Commission does the review, and we as the local commission are a consulting party to the review. I would say we have a ways to go in terms of getting to a process where the local historical commission is able to identify and advocate for protections from adverse effects in these federal and state funded projects. And I say that because as you can see in the packet, we have a number of letters that, you know, haven't come to the commission. I just think there's a lack of awareness. You know, we have made specific requests to review projects and they still aren't brought to us. So we have now, you know, in Holly, we have a preservation planner who's very sensitive and aware about this. And we, I think, are all agreed that it's pretty straightforward and cut and dry. If there is a project that the project manager on Nantucket is sending information to the Massachusetts Historical Commission, all of that information that goes to the Massachusetts Historical Commission should also go to the local historical commission. And then we can send our comments to the Massachusetts Historical Commission. So that is, you know, what we've agreed to. There's going to be an education process to get all of the different departments, the airport, the sewer department, the Department of Public Works, the transportation planner when we have one again, the planning commission, to get these projects to come to us at the same time that they they go to the MHC. But I think we'll get there. And if we don't get there, we also have the option of putting forward a local bylaw. We don't currently have a local bylaw that says our commission has to review things, but the Massachusetts Historical Commission has a model bylaw that they encourage communities that, you know, can't work things out without a bylaw to adopt. So that's always an option for us. So sorry to go on and on about that. I just wanted to get everybody on the same page about, you know, what this is. It's part of a federal law. It's relevant to federal and state funded projects. I think we have an understanding of what needs to happen and a path forward. And with that, we have a current project, which is the Complete Streets Sidewalk Improvement, something I think everybody really wants to support because we want kids to be able to get safely to schools. And we want it to still look like Nantucket and make sure that artifacts that we've identified in our surveys are protected. So we have the opportunity to give comments to the Massachusetts Historical Commission on this project. And Mickey is going to take us through the project. And I also want to mention we have Dick Phelan on the call here, and Dick Phelan's family owns the White Farmhouse in the field on Pleasant Street. Thank you for preserving that so beautifully for the enjoyment of the community. So Mickey, go ahead.
So is, you know, this project that we're talking about right now is the town's proposal to upgrade the area around Sparks Avenue, Pleasant Street, and between basically the high school, Five Corners, and down to the new Rotary by the Stop and Shop. So Hillary and Ben Norman and I kind of reviewed that, and we put together this letter to the MHC, which is most of you have received this in your emails, but for those of you who haven't, I'm just going to basically read the letter. And it's to the MHC, and it says the Nantucket Historic Commission has reviewed the project regarding Nantucket on Nantucket Island, Complete Streets, Pleasant, Sparks, and William Streets, Nantucket Island is a National Historic Landmark in its entirety. The project abuts numerous historic properties, which we will identify soon. In addition to sharing the MHC's request for an archaeological survey or avoidance of the archaeologically sensitive area, the Nantucket Historical Commission is advising the MHC of two local priorities. One, protecting and retaining the original street artifacts, such as historic curbing installed from 1830 to 1970. And two, protecting the rural and distinctive quality of Nantucket roads. This quality is expressed through appearance and quantity of signage, width of the road, treatment of the edges of the road, including types and materials of curbing and sidewalks and fencing, native vegetation, and types of landscaping. Following these priorities, we have the following comments on the project as presented in July, in the July plans from Beta. Sheet numbers specified refer to this plan. Regarding street artifacts, we request that the work area be surveyed for historic pavement and street artifacts by a qualified preservation practitioner familiar with the NHC's booklet, Preservation and Maintenance of Historic Pavement on Nantucket. It's available on the NHC's website. Historic artifacts such as curbing, bollards, milestones, and other similar artifacts 50 years old and older should be indicated for reuse in situ. Construction specifications for setting curbing should align with those described in the booklet in order to safeguard against cracking and heaving of historic curbs. Regarding this distinct character of rural roads, we support the raised crosswalk proposed at the Boys and Girls Club on sheet number 15, but ask to review and consult on the design details as they are developed. Where an asphalt multi-use path is proposed, we would like to retain a grass barrier between the multi-use paths and the streets in order to minimize the width of uninterrupted asphalt and preserve a more rural look. Wherever the grass strip is provided between the multi-use path and the roadway shoulder should use a natural earth berm rather than the proposed Cape Cod berm, unless drainage conditions indicate the need for an asphalt berm. Pleasant Street from Atlantic, locally known as Five Corners, to Williams Lane is especially scenic and historic. The proposed design would eliminate a row of mature trees. The area along the ivy patch, just prior to Williams, is steeply graded and more mature trees are specified for removal. A surface other than asphalt is preferred and a soft surface should be explored. At the ivy patch, we request to explore solutions other than regrading, such as dropping the sidewalk down to natural grade and winding through the existing trees. While traffic planning is beyond the scope of this commission, we are aware of the intention to install a roundabout at Four Corners in consideration of making Pleasant Street one way towards Mid-Island from Atlantic to Williams. If this came to pass, it would remove the need for the easement and complicated sidewalk construction of the stretch of Pleasant Street. We recommend extending the existing brick sidewalk along Pleasant Street to reach Sanford Road. Numerous utility poles are required to be relocated as a result of this project. The town has a bylaw requiring the undergrounding of wires for scenic and historic reasons, as well as accessibility. We recommend undergrounding of wires be completed with this project. We request future consultation regarding project details as they are developed. For example, signage, retaining walls, and landscaping. Signs should be the minimum size allowed under the MUTCD. Fluorescent colors and LEDs should be avoided. And all road work should be completed in accordance with the Town of Nantucket's bylaw 127-19, limitations on road improvements and construction. So, having said that, I think just as sort of an aside, we have to remember the focus of this board is really the impact of these solutions that they have on the historic character. And we shouldn't really focus too much on safety, traffic safety issues. We're more concerned with the change to the historic character from this commission. So that's that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. Dick, did you want to make any comments?
Thank you for allowing me to talk to your committee members. First of all, I will state that the property that is adjacent to Pleasant Street that the Phelan family owns is divided up really into three different portions. Joe, my brother, who I think is on the call here, owns what's traditionally called the farmhouse, the big white house. And our brother Sam owns what we call the little house, which is to the left of the ivy patch. And then the Phelan family LLC owns the vacant land, which is kind of U-shaped. It goes from the ivy patch behind Joe's house and then circles around to Pleasant Street. That is truly a historic area, and that visually from Pleasant Street, those parcels have not changed since the 1800s. The little house was, I think, built in the 1800s, and Joe's house was built early in the 1900s. It's been in the Phelan family now for multiple generations, probably 4 generations. And the goal of the family is to preserve it in its natural state. And therefore, we're very concerned about how the town might lay out sidewalks on that property. The ivy patch, which is now we call it an ivy, everybody calls it an ivy patch. It used to be a very meticulous garden that was written up in Home and Garden magazine back in the early 1900s. And so, obviously, I've always had a goal to restore it, but never had the time to do it. And I don't think that will happen. As far as the sidewalk is concerned, I think the family is united in the fact that safety is important. And there are people walking down Pleasant Street, and once they get to our property, really there's no sidewalk, so they have to walk in the street. So we all agree that a sidewalk is important. What we don't know is how the town would do it, how the town would construct it. I like Mickey's idea of having a natural grade within the ivy patch. That seems very logical and probably much less expensive than it would be to put in, bring that area up to road level. And I was told by Bartlett's Tree Service that if they did cut those trees down that are adjacent to the road in the ivy patch area and then filled it in, it would probably cause disruptions in the seepage of water, and that might kill the trees that are then be adjacent to the sidewalk. So it's not a simple solution to just say, okay, we're going to cut the trees down, we're going to fill it in, and then put a sidewalk on top of it. Myself personally, I would like to see a permeable surface, not macadam or asphalt. I just don't think that is in keeping with the historic area. There's currently a split rail fence that runs the length of on the LLC property anyhow, and Joe's property, and that constantly has to be repaired, just like any split rail fence needs to be repaired. And we would, if they're going to take that down, we would like to see it replaced. So the long and the short of it is, we are for a sidewalk. I personally would not advocate cutting the trees down. Those trees have been there since the early 1900s, and with some maintenance, I think that they could probably be restored. Even though if you talk to an arborist, they'll say, well, they're on the end of their lifespan. But I've seen them. I've been coming to the island all my life, and those trees and Pleasant Street have been a part of my life, and I've seen them there for all that time, and I think it's important to try to restore and maintain those trees. Tommy can speak to the area because he was our caretaker for years, and it's a special area. I know that at one time in the here and there column of the paper, it was written up as a special area in the island, and that it has not been disrupted for really over 100 years, probably 120 years. It's still the same. So, I would like to try to keep it as it is. However, we do understand that it's necessary for safety reasons to have a sidewalk installed if they're not going to do a one-way street.
Thank you very much, Dick. Thanks for being here. Angus, you had your hand up.
Dick, it's a pleasure to meet you, even just virtually. I have to say that the most pleasant thing on Pleasant Street is your all's property. And I so appreciate and I'm so grateful for your preservation mindedness through the decades. It's been 40 years of driving by there for me anyway. And I so appreciate it. While many others have sold off their parcels and divided them up and done that whole thing. That just is something I always look forward to passing. I hope I never hit anybody just glancing over as I pass by, because I love that house and the land around it. And Mickey, I appreciate the letter you guys have put together and agree with all those recommendations. And in this area, I think that a dropped natural path, if the Phalens are agreeable with that, to give some sort of easement, because it would come inside your property probably to get past the difference in grade, to be able to have a path through there. I think that would be a charming little interval into the getting over to Williams Lane as you're coming down from Five Corners. But anyway, thanks again for just your efforts with maintaining your property. That's such a gift to the town.
Thank you. And we've had multiple comments as yours, just by passersby or people that even come into the property and will acknowledge the fact that they enjoy the view from the road. And it's important to us to keep it as natural as we can. We do cut the field twice a year, which we never used to do that. In fact, we never used to cut the lawn, but that's a sign of the times.
Tom, you have a hand up?
Yeah, just a couple of things that I'd like to mention is, I've known Dick and his brothers for a long, long time since I was their caretaker, but not only is the Phalens been around a long time, Dick's been very involved in the town with preservation. He's been the clerk of the work for the preservation of the Pacific Club and other things like that. And so these guys are, they don't only just talk the talk, they can walk the walk. And I think that we can do this. I think that this board can help the Phalens, and between us, we can see that this gets done without cutting those trees down, and make it work. And if they're willing to, keep the property as is, I think we can certainly come up with a way to get some kind of a brick walk or some kind of along the trees where the field is, and then step down into the hole there and get between Sam's driveway and Joe's driveway and back out. I see it happening. And if Dick wasn't here, I would have said everything that he has just said.
I think if you walk the grade, you'll see there isn't a big step down from Joe's driveway to the ivy patch. And then there's maybe 2 steps going up into what's Sam's driveway. And so the contour for a walker would not change that much.
You know, I'm seeing something or sensing something happen here, which is pretty interesting. I want to ask, because we do want to approve this letter. So we do have a placeholder in the letter to put in all of Holly's comments that she included on the project notification form. So are there any other comments? I want to talk a little bit more about this specific, the Phelan property, but first, you know, we're looking at a whole bunch of streets. We have a letter, we're proposing to send it to the Massachusetts Historical Commission and copy the project managers, Beta, adding in Holly's comments about the history. Are there any requests for changes to the letters or any questions? Holly?
I just had a question as far as what the commission would recommend, and it sounds like from the Phelan family, from that stretch for the sidewalk. I agree about not having an asphalt or macadam in that area. And you know, would brick be the better solution for that location, from that stretch to Five Corners?
Yeah, so Dick has let me know he would like to see brick. Personally, I think of brick as being more of an urban, like not really a rural solution, and I see it being a rural area. But I'm wondering, do we really need to resolve that here? I mean, the letter says we'd like to see a soft, the letter says we don't want to see asphalt. We'd like to see other considerations or potentially, you know, a soft solution. So I think what we hope is that the project designer will come and work with this commission. I know the project designer will need to work with the family, because unless they want to take that strip by eminent domain, which of course they could, you know, the family is a big stakeholder here.
May I make one more comment?
Yeah.
So I probably mentioned a number of times on this board that my family came from Westchester Street. And up until the last 20 years, there was a footpath, not a sidewalk, all up and down Westchester Street. And there was a sidewalk because it needed to be in front of the old hospital. But other than that, there was a footpath. And I don't see anything wrong with that, frankly. I mean, nobody ever tripped or fell down in the footpath. And I don't see why that wouldn't work here. We go with the trees. And I couldn't agree more with your suggestion, Hillary, that, you know, it would be a soft thing. If Phelan's want a brick thing, you know, we'll work that out. But, you know, I think in the rural setting that it is, as you say, a footpath is totally doable.
So can I just want to thank you. And I do want to talk more about that property, because I have an idea kind of percolating about that. But are we ready to have a motion to approve the letter?
Can I make a motion to approve the letter as written with whatever the supplements are that Holly's adding?
Thank you, Angus. And I heard Tom second that. Mickey?
Aye.
Clement?
Aye.
Georgia?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So thank you very much. We'll work on that and get it out to the Mass Historical Commission and the stakeholders. About the, Dick, about your family's property. You know, this is private property and there is a town need. We are a town commission. I'm just wondering, would you be receptive? So I think we should all acknowledge that it's going to take the town years to get this complete streets project done. There are utilities that need to be moved. It's government procurement. It's a really long process. I have not had any updates from the DPW or the planning director about the current status of things. So I'm not speaking with any current knowledge about, but that's just sort of the way things go. So I think it's a fair guess. But this is your property. It's your family. Would you like to work with our commission to maybe come up with some designs? I mean, there's nothing stopping you from putting something on your property. Now, you may decide that's not something you want to do, but we could potentially help. We could potentially bring the land bank in just for this project if they were receptive to that. I think the land council might also be an ally. But we like to be problem solvers. We like to bring people together and come up with solutions. Is that something that you'd like to work with us on, or you'd like our help with?
Well, I'm sure that we would like to work with the powers to be that are going to plan the sidewalk. And right now, we've been working primarily through you, Hillary, because you've been the primary mover and shaker of this. We have not had an awful lot of contact with the town other than you, and in a way that's kind of disappointed us. We do wish that it was at Rob McNeil, who I've talked to a couple times, and he knows the interest that the family has in the sidewalk, but he quite frankly hasn't reached out to us. We've had to reach out to him, and we'd like to be more involved. Obviously with the virus, that's more difficult. I haven't been on the island since last February, but now that I've got one shot and we'll get another, we're starting to make plans to reconnect with the island. And so yes, and I think that maybe Sam and Joe and maybe Rob, I think you've had emails with, who's a civil engineer down in Florida, would be interested. So we don't want to get too many cooks going on here, but which makes it more difficult. And unfortunately, our family always has multiple ideas, which is sometimes difficult to boil down into one. But yeah, I think we would.
That's terrific. Let me talk with Holly a little bit, and maybe Mickey would continue to work on this, because Mickey is also on the Commission for Disabilities and the Road and the Traffic Safety Work Group, which are two other committees that would be very interested. Personally, I use that road all the time, and so to have a pedestrian path would just be a game changer for access for everybody who's in town to get to Mid-Island. Yeah, so let's just see where it goes, and thank you for the invitation.
So a couple of things. First of all, I mentioned brick to you. I said that because I did not want asphalt, but if there's some other semi-permeable surface or just dirt, that's fine with us as well. The other thing you should know that the vacant property does extend up to Williams Lane, and we abut that property as well. I think there's 200 or 300 feet that abut to Williams Lane, and that sidewalk is, quite frankly, it's in very, very poor shape, and that needs to be improved.
Yeah. You remind me, Dick, I wanted to share one image before we change topics here. Talking about the role of having a commission that is concerned with preservation and the just the integrity and the visual integrity of our island. This commission, the Historical Commission, back in, you can see the date on this. Can you see my screen? You see the pond?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is from 2014. So the town had the laudable and very useful idea of creating a bike path to go from Washington, like Consu Springs area, back behind the Great Harbor Yacht Club and Sail Seafood, and join around to Washington or Lower Orange Street, I guess. It's called the Goose Pond Bike Path. It was a project over $2 million. Remain helped get it started as well. But when it used grant money, so there was a Section 106 review process triggered, and nobody on, I think Susan might have been on the commission at the time, but nobody here today was involved with that. But it was a really fraught project. This commission, I think, ended up with a lot of black eyes, made people very upset because it was like almost ready to break ground on this project. And the commission was raising all sorts of concerns about what the plan would do. And people got really angry. Nobody wanted to be opposing a bike path. You know, I think it was perceived that this commission was opposing the bike path, and that was unpopular. So I don't think it's anything to look back on and say, I think it's something to learn from and say, we don't want to have that happen again. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that looking at the letters and the documents from that period of time, I actually really think the commission was right. I think they were right to make a stink. This is what Goose Pond used to look like. It was beautiful. This was all natural. The ducks could go and nest along here instead of, you know, and this is what the path used to look like. It was a dirt path. This was the former railway. And I don't have a picture right now of what this area looks like, but there's like 4 feet of steel sheeting that makes the edge of this pond. And this pond is like a drainage pit now. It's just looks, the whole thing looks awful. It looks like an industrial incursion on a natural setting. I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks that. Does anybody else want to comment on what Goose Pond looks like now? Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you just said. Every single word of it. It was a nightmare. And unfortunately, that it hasn't destroyed the pond, but it has certainly lessened its appeal. We'll put it that way, and it's a shame. And that's kind of a purpose that we can serve, as you just showed. You know, if we're having a footpath like that going down Dickie Phelan's property, as opposed to what the picture that you don't have exists there that maybe the town would do, I think that we're an important board that needs to be looking into this.
Hillary, I'd also like to chime in.
Oh, sorry. Wait, hang on. I heard a female voice, but who was trying? Oh, Georgia wanted to say something.
Completely agree about the pond. And I think too, I think that we have to keep an eye, believe it or not, on land bank. I think the land bank has a lot of money, and their tendency lately, it seems to me, is to over parkify things. I mean, businessify things, which was started with this bike path through what was a perfectly good bike path as it was in a rustic way. They're doing it on Easy Street, where they had a perfectly nice native way of looking out at the basin, and now they're making it, they want to make it look like a park. They're putting in trees that are not sustainable in a salt water environment. Putting little concrete benches to sit on. They're doing things that take away nature and make it look artificial and like more like a tourist environment. And I think it's one of the things that we really have to keep an eye on, both in that context and in the downtown context as well.
Okay, thank you, Georgia. And David, did you want to say something? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, the picture that you shared of that really cool bike path was before my time as a resident on Nantucket, and I ride my bike all the time in that area, and I sure wish that it looked like that. So I just wanted to give that perspective and say that, you know, as a biker, an avid biker, very disappointed with how that project went, and I hope that we can achieve something a little bit different with the project on Pleasant Street.
Thank you. Susan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say, as having sat through all of those discussions and dealt with the wrath of different people and the spreading of rumors by the big money that was involved and things like that, I want to really encourage us to keep going on this project because it was a shame. And even though it was a historic view as well as a historic piece of property, because it was the old railway bed, we were not able to get things done the way we have them done. So it's kind of like beware, because it is extremely difficult to move these projects once they are in motion. And so the earlier that we come very forcefully forward, the more likely we will be able to kind of move it in a direction, not stop it. We don't want to stop that, because as we're saying, we all would really appreciate having that walkway there, and thank the Phalens for realizing that it is something that would benefit the town, and thank them very much for that. But we want to do it right. So I'm all behind this, and can't wait to, if there is some sort of a fight to be had, I'm in the fight. So.
Well, hopefully, thank you, Susan, and thank you for sharing that institutional memory. And I just hope we can do it without a fight. I mean, it doesn't have to be a fight. And you know, we all want things to be beautiful on Nantucket, but we also recognize that, oh, hang on a second. I have 3 other people in the house in like a big open space all doing things. So sorry about that. What I was, you know what, I can't remember what I was going to say. I just hope we can get a good outcome here and be collaborative. Did anybody else want to comment? Vince?
Not to contradict anyone on appearance or anything to do with the Goose Pond. I had to just do some extremely quick reading, and I'm probably covering ground people know and have known for quite some time, but the previous path was not ADH, Americans with Disability Act compliant. Now it is. Not going to say any more than that.
Thank you, Vince. That's actually what I was going to say, which is, you know, we need infrastructure that is suitable for a wide variety of people to use, that is stable. That's actually exactly what I was going to say. I wasn't going to use that technical term, but so I think our challenge is always on Nantucket. How do we change with the times, update, but not lose the special character that we have? I think that's really the challenge. Okay. We have one other project that's going on that I just want to flag for people. We're reaching the end of our meeting, but it's on our agenda, the sewer main. So the sewer force main is being upgraded, or there's a new one going in, and there's going to be an excavation happening from the C Street pump station out to a Surfside station. There has been a review, and Holly has just last night shared some plans with me covering the land from Vesper to Surfside. There was an archaeological study done. I've shared it with Susan, our resident archaeologist. I can't imagine that we would have many more concerns to add to the MHC for this stretch of land, except for potentially the tree. We'll have to look at the plans, and we might want to make a comment about the very old elm tree at the Four Corners area. But does anybody have any immediate concern? Well, I'm trying to think how we can help with this. I think I will have to circulate the plans and have another meeting where we can gather feedback on this section. But the thing is that there's much more that's being done in much more sensitive areas than just Surfside Road. So the sewer force main is going to be going from C Street down Center Street, around Liberty Street. There's already major work. It's already being done on Liberty Street, up the older part of Liberty Street to Gardner Street, and then out Milk Street. So those are areas where there's historic pavement, and there's also areas where there's wires that we'd like to get underground. So Holly, I see you have a hand up. What have you been
Yeah,
able to
just
find out?
a point of clarification. So for the work that's being done near Tom on North Liberty Street, that's actually CC Construction, and they're doing a water and sewer replacement project from the cliff. And that's been going on for the past 2 years. So that's something that is out of the realm of the sewer project. I have received an email from the project engineer for the section of the project, because the MHC is in two phases of projects. So it goes from the C Street pump station to the new pump station that's off Surfside Road, and then from Surfside Road to the sewer beds. So the one that you were talking about was the one from the proposed sewer station, which is where the old Reese property that you all are familiar with, I assume, to the sewer beds. Grubb and Associates did that work, and I assume Susan is familiar with that company. I was told by the designer for the consultant for the section from C Street pump station to the new pump station that the plans are 60% in process right now as far as completed goes. So again, I just want to let you all know that I have not seen plans. I've only saw the conceptual layout, and I have had discussions with them in the beginning about making sure that any proposal was within their existing limits of disturbance. Rightfully so, because this section is going through part of our fish lots from 1717, and we want to make sure that nothing that has already been nothing that new is being disturbed, put it that way. So they are well aware of if there's going to be any type of new disturbance that you all would have a comment or two on that. So hopefully we can get some proposed plans, maybe draft ones, before the commission to review. That was my update.
Thank you, Holly. Sorry, I'm just needing to move to a different part of my home. So Zoom issues. Holly, I'm very happy to hear that. I did not know that the Liberty Street work was a different project. But what I'm understanding is that, we're going to have some discussion with the sewer group. We're going to be able to look at the construction plans and give comments. And when they do have the plans, and I want to ask, so the plans that they sent to MHC, obviously they did that because they had to send it to the MHC. The other parts of the project, are they also subject to Section 106 review? Do we actually know that?
My understanding is there are 2 applications before MHC for this proposal for the overall sewer project.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So it's just that MHC hasn't gotten plans, so they haven't had anything to comment on.
As far as I know, that the plans aren't even completed yet. Correct.
Okay. Okay, great.
And I can read you an email that I actually received this morning from their engineer, and bear with me for one quick second. Basically saying that they're willing to have an early conversation with where they are at right now with the plans. So even though they're 60% done, they would be more than happy to have a conversation with you all, which is good.
Terrific.
So
That's exactly where we want to be.
Yeah, no. I mean, and I know that there was a lot of frustration and whatnot, but there's all these different projects and parts of the pieces of the puzzle and whatnot. And I do want to make a note that, you've seen the letters in the packet that I've received from MHC. These people, from these particular organizations for whatever project that they're trying to receive approval from MHC on, we are copied in one form or another, and I'm going to narrow that down with MHC. But they do not provide us that initial plan. So for instance, the airport, that is up to you to ask them for that information. So it's a lot of moving parts and pieces. I just want to mention that.
Right, but what we're asking, Holly, is if they could please sorry, maybe I misunderstood, but what we're asking is that if they could understand when they send things to the MHC, if they also copy them to you for forwarding to us. Is that something we can feel they will accept
I can
and do?
speak anything from DPW and the sewer department. They do.
Okay.
You know, I was not copied on any application or as far as plans go for the C Street pump station because they're still in the process of
Right.
those.
But
airport's a little different ball game on that one.
yeah, so the MHC knows that we want to see these things and they know that we're active and that we're the right contact. And it would just be great if bit by bit, the people in the town also know. And it sounds like we're there with sewer and DPW and the planning department. So as far as the current plans that we do have for Surfside, what would the commission like to do? I mean, I'm pretty comfortable that, you know, aside from the tree, I don't think there's any historic artifacts that we're concerned about. And I'm happy perhaps to delegate this to Susan and Holly to let us know if there are any additional comments we want to send to the MHC. What does everybody think?
I'm in favor of doing that.
Okay, and I saw Angus had a hand up.
You mentioned the tree. I can't imagine losing that tree. It's iconic. But I appreciate if Susan would like to be doing that.
That's true. I'm kind of volunteering, Susan. Sorry, Susan.
Thanks, Susan.
And I haven't had a chance yet this morning to read through it, but I will. And I know that I just skimmed it through the introduction and know that she has a heavy emphasis on human remains. However, that area has been so disturbed. I'll have to look to see if I don't think they're planning on changing the roadbed or anything. They're just going through that, aren't they? Or are they going through the side?
So I just got the report as well, but
Okay.
I did see that there were areas that said, you know, these areas have not been previously disturbed.
Okay, I will look
yeah.
in detail then and see what they're, you know, what happens is they usually just say, oh, well, just have the construction guys notify us and then we'll come out. Well, the problem with that is that they're not looking necessarily for those things to come up in the soil. So unless they see a skull or they see a whole beam from a house, they don't stop. They just keep going. So I'd be curious to see if in those areas that are previously undisturbed within the last 25 years, 50 years, whether they have somebody on site that is actually watching just in those areas. It doesn't have to be somebody for all the areas that have been disturbed, you know, continuously, but in that, in the undisturbed areas, there should be somebody standing there watching and specifically looking for any kind of historic or prehistoric material. So I'll look through and I'll report back to you.
Right.
Thank you, Susan. Tom?
Yeah, with what's going on my street.
Yeah.
I know they don't have a somebody looking for artifacts, but they do have a guy here every day looking for asbestos. So why not looking for artifacts, you know?
Oh my Lord. I know. And you know, it's interesting because again, when I got here in the early 80s, you know, the community kind of acted as their own archaeologists. You know, people were always kind of standing around watching whenever ground was opened up, and not just to pot hunt things, but to report them and, you know, take time to really look at things. And of course, that doesn't really happen anymore. So, you know, we've transitioned into this a different time period where people are too busy and they're just too busy. I mean, we all used to have time to just wander around and look at things, and it just isn't the case anymore. So it's, I think, necessary now to have, specific people in place to be looking at these things. And I'm sorry I'm not on island. I would definitely go hang out there, Tom, and just take a look at what was going on. I won't be back until April, unfortunately. But I could ask maybe a couple of other people, and you probably know, some of these old timers on the island, and not even so old timers, they're kids in their 30s now. They know what they're looking for and might be willing to, just as community people, go out and take a peek. I would hope.
I'm one of them. I'm out there every day. These guys know me by first name. My wife, she's
Good.
made scones, and so
Yeah.
and so they know us well, and they don't realize it, but I'm looking for.
Good for you. All right. So see, that community is still here on the island,
Well,
which
it's
is
the lily pond. I mean, the Indians called it Wesco. I mean.
right. That's true. So I'll take a look. I'll report back. And Hillary, I'll talk to you even before the meeting, just so you can disseminate any other information.
Yeah, that sounds good. Mickey, I saw you had a hand up. Did you want to say something about this?
I was just going to comment that from what I remember years ago, that there was an Indian burial ground or village site somewhere near the My Common Road area. So they probably won't be going that far into it, but it's nearby.
Well, so they hired, the MHC directed them to hire an archaeologist to advise, and Mary Lynn Rainey, who is absolutely expert and worked with who was it? Elizabeth Little.
White.
No, not Betty White is the current historian, but Elizabeth Little was.
Oh, excuse me,
Elizabeth
Little.
Little was the famous
Yes.
Nantucket archaeologist, and Mary Lynn Rainey worked directly for her. So I think we can feel very confident. It's not something I think we should put in our packet, because this stuff is actually quite, it is public information, but we try to not make it too public for obvious reasons. So, okay, so I think what we're saying, if I have it correctly, is that for the sewer project that the MHC has commented on, we will send comments, which could include no additional concerns, and we will delegate that to Susan and Holly. And they will keep me informed, and I will keep everybody else informed. Does that sound right? If I could have a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Okay, I see Tom, I saw Clement second, and all in favor, Mickey?
Aye.
Georgia?
Aye.
Clement?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Angus?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And I am also an aye. And then we will await, and we'll work with Weston and Sampson to get some kind of a briefing, depending. I don't know what their timeline is. We may need to schedule another meeting. I don't think so, but just, we'll let you know. Okay, we are over time, but I do want to talk about the sidewalks downtown. I was really hoping that Dawn would be able to join us at this meeting, but I expected her, but obviously something came up, so she couldn't join us. So I've included in the packet letters from 26 people asking that the town please, please, please develop a policy about working on historic pavement. If we had a policy, we wouldn't need to be so concerned about work that's happening. So we requested this policy. I have been told by Libby that she will work with Rob to come up with a policy. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I have to tell you, at some point, the town at the select board asked for a policy in April of 2019. So how long should a policy take? And I'm upset about it. I just think I've been told flat out it's not a priority. And I don't think that that's acceptable when the select board has 100 people show up asking for a policy, and they say that they will create a policy, and then it's nearly 2 years later and there's still no policy. I just wonder, like, well, what, as voters, you know, we elect officials, we expect them to do what they say they're going to do, and they very clearly said that they were going to do this, and they haven't done it. So I think I included a draft letter in our packet that I'm proposing to send with the 26 letters to the select board. And I'd love to hear comments on that guidance. What's the pleasure of the commission?
I think you should send it as written. I read all those letters. I read your letter, and I think it was great. I think if we're going to get some action, nothing's going to happen unless we press it, right?
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else?
I second that.
Okay, Angus.
I agree with both Tom and Angus as well.
Okay.
I agree.
I agree too. I love the letters. Your letter and everybody else's. Excellent.
George, I see a hand from you.
Yeah, I think it was fabulous, Hillary, your letter, and that you elicited so many other compelling letters. And I think it's got to be impressive, not only to the select board, but to Libby and Rob. I think the issue, at the risk of sounding like a Trump person, which I'm certainly not, the issue could be the local equivalent of the deep state, right? There are people who stay in their positions regardless of who the select board is. And they tend to do what they want to do regardless of what the select board says. And I'm afraid that's what we may be dealing with here. They hear from the select board, and the select board hears from us, but they just figure, look, in a couple of years, all these guys won't be care anymore, and we'll do what we want to do. I mean, I know that's what I worry.
But Georgia, to be fair, this is, it's Dawn who has said to me, like, I'm talking to the chair of the select board, and she said, well, we'd like to do this and we care about the pavement, but there's many other things on our plate and it's just not a priority. So, there's always, there is a limit to what everybody can do, but there's also, a responsible, responsive government that does what they say they're going to do. And I think part of I don't want to get into all the politics, but we have a 5-person board. The 5-person board that asked for policy on historic pavement had a different chair, a different vice chair, and it was a different board. So, where's the continuity there? Rita is no longer on the board. And at the time, the chair and the vice chair who really if you want to know, who sets the agenda for the town, it's the chair and the vice chair of the select board. Directing Libby, and Libby directs everybody else as our COO, everybody else, even, the people she doesn't really direct, she has the right to direct them. So, so it was a different board, but nonetheless, a lot of the people on that board are still there and still care. And, we're an independent commission. This is a clear priority. We've done a ton of work on it. We could write the policy ourselves, but they need to write a policy they can live with. And I don't know why I'm still talking. I guess is there anybody who doesn't want me to send this letter or wants to request some changes? No. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I don't think it's anything we need to vote on. It's consistent with what we've been talking about for some time. Just a couple other quick things before we adjourn. Policy on street furniture downtown. So when I did talk with Libby about this issue of the pavement and other things, she asked that it's been a persistent problem that people call her about street furniture that doesn't match the town's guidelines, wanting to see changes, but she doesn't have a policy and she can't remove someone's private property, and she has to be worried about treating everyone equally. So she wants to have a policy. And I'm not sure if this is really a historical commission thing, because, we're talking about somebody's putting a beach chair out or a sandwich board or something. I don't know, maybe it is, but either way, I volunteered to organize the process. I formed a working group, which consists of Kevin Kuster, a chief complainer about this, bless his heart. Janet Schulte, Director of Culture and Tourism, because it affects our, the way our town looks. Henry Terry, the head of the Town Association, because it's a town thing. me, and then I invited the Chamber of Commerce, but they declined to participate. And the goal is to come up with some recommendations for the town manager to consider about policies. And if the Historical Commission would like to be consulted about this, or would like me to be there as a representative of the Historical Commission, we can certainly do that. But I didn't want to declare that without, you know, giving everybody a chance to say, yes, this seems like a commission issue. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Do you want to have a voice, or do you not care? Angus?
If there are guidelines that are set forth by this subgroup or group of people, I think as a commission, we would want to know what they are and comment on them.
Okay. All right. Does anybody want to second that?
Second
I'll second that.
Okay, Tom. Okay, I see lots of hands. Okay. All right. So I will be sure that whatever policy we come up to it'll be the town manager's decision to adopt it, but I'll be sure that it comes back here and everybody can review and comment. Holly, did you have any comment on that? I don't think I've even really talked to you about this.
Nope, it's news to me.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, if this is something that the town manager is wanting assistance on, I think the group of people that you've put together, I think that's great. That's
Okay.
good. And yeah, getting feedback from a historical perspective, I think wouldn't hurt.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, I really want this commission to be able to be helpful to the town. I think for everything that we're like complaining about and being a pain about, we should do like 2 or 3 things that are just like flat out helpful. So this would be one of those things, except for the people who are putting the non-compliant benches up. They're going to be upset. Okay. Yep, Tom.
March 19th.
I'm sorry?
Our next.
Oh, our next meeting, it's on our agenda, is Friday, March 19th.
Yeah, just want to make sure.
Preservation Month 2022. So I've continued to work with this on, work with Esteli on this. Our other volunteer is David Silver. We're at the point where we are distributing the work plan to other stakeholders. And the biggest stakeholder, well, not the biggest stakeholder, but kind of an important stakeholder is the Historical Association. We got some very interesting and thoughtful feedback from James Russell. And by the way, David, I haven't shared this with you because it's been conversations with Esteli. I've asked Esteli to approach James. Well, I didn't ask her. I mean, she suggested it and I agreed because she has a relationship with James from past projects. She did a past exhibit with the NHA. So James had a very interesting comment I wanted to share with the commission. This came from, you know, he forwarded it to somebody he trusts to give him an opinion about the idea of having this exhibit and Preservation Month 2022. And that person said, you know, telling the history of preservation is very important, but he really recommended that we have a curator, that we find a way to hire a guest curator, and that it not be someone who's on the island and it not be someone from one of the current island groups, that it really be an academic, somebody from one of the leading programs in Boston or Philadelphia or one of the other places. I mean, we have leading academics working with groups on the island who would of course be present, but I really found the idea of sort of a contemporary take on what is preservation today on Nantucket and where is it going? You know, what will preservation look like in 50 years on Nantucket? I thought that was a really compelling idea. And would make this conversation that we want to have for Preservation Month in 2022 even more exciting and relevant to a broader group of people. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that comment. Esteli let James know that she and I, for 2 people anyway, thought it was interesting and that there should be a follow-up discussion. I wondered if anybody had any responses or ideas about that.
Well,
Yes,
It's
Clement.
Clement, Hillary. I think hiring an outsider and a professional is an excellent idea, just because there's so many local, I guess you'd call them stakeholders. You know, we all love our own little piece of the island and would want to focus perhaps on that. This would bring a fresh look to it. And I think anything that we can do to get more people to come to this exhibit by making it new and exciting, interactive, or whatever curators do now would be very well worth it. So I support that. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Clement. Any other comments? Yes, Angus.
I agree too. I like the idea of it being accessible by a wider audience by bringing some off-island curator. So I like that aspect of a wider audience, and also a non-partial curator.
Yes, well, exactly. Yeah. Georgia.
I was going to say exactly what Angus just said.
Yeah.
I agree as Susan here.
Okay.
Also in agreement here.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, well, so we'll see where this goes. You know, I'm letting Esteli kind of really run with it at this point and just trying to facilitate. As soon as she has something that she wants to share with the commission, I'll be sure that gets shared. And you know, we're still in the planning phase. Okay. Oh, one important point of other business. So we have 3 positions expiring in June. I don't remember who they are. I know Dawn is one. Sorry, I'm just. Can anyone easily look this up? Let's see. Sorry, I'm just going to our webpage and then I can see who's expiring. I mean, not personally expiring. All right, so Mickey, your term is up. Angus and Dawn. So you will all need to reapply if you decide you don't want to serve, you know, for another, I think it's 3-year term. So please let me know. But you'll need to put a letter, and I think it will probably be announced in May. Yes, Holly.
I believe there's a form from the select, from the town admin. I can ask Erica what that form is and produce that to the 3 that need it.
Yeah, and you know, Holly, I actually know where it is. It's on. Okay. There's a part of the web page that is all about commissions and committees, and there's a link there to, you know, renewal. It's a different form for reapplying, and they'll put an announcement when they want it. I think it's in May, but I just want to say, I think all of the people whose terms are expiring this year have been phenomenal contributors to this commission. Don is an alternate. I don't know if he wants to continue. I've asked him to let me know. His attendance has been less great, but he's also, you know, has attended, he's participated in work groups. And he, you know, if he can't attend, he always like makes sure that his input is there, and he brings a really interesting perspective from general governance that I think is really valuable. So anyway, I just want to be aware that we talk about the care and feeding of our constitution here with the commission. And I think that we also might want to talk at some point, it's a little too late for this now, but do we want to put an ad in the paper? You know, do we want to develop a pipeline? People won't always be able to serve. So I think, you know, we also have the HDC where it's elected, but just generally as the body that is concerned with recruiting and developing the volunteers who do this work on Nantucket, both through the HDC and the NHC, do we want to have any, and I think this is consistent with our objectives, do we want to maybe have a day where we talk about what it's like to serve on a commission, or how can you serve on a commission, or what does a commission do? What do you think?
If
Yep, Holly?
as far as the HDC advisory boards, when they just did their renewals, we had to post it in the newspaper. So I'm not too sure if that's something that we will have to do as well, but I can reach out to town admin on that.
Yeah, so the town has to post these things. I think they have to do it twice with 60 days notice. But what I'm talking about, Holly, is just an information session that would really actually try to bring people forward who thought, you know, I really care about preservation. I would like to volunteer my time, but I just don't know how to do it. Especially people, you know, people of color, like people who are newly coming to Nantucket. So is there anybody who's especially interested and might like to organize some kind of public outreach and lead a session? It's okay if the answer is no, but I wanted to ask.
Not Hillary, I'm not saying,
Yes.
I'm not saying I'd like to organize a session, but I'm thinking, is this something that could be done by way of an op-ed piece in the Inky Mirror?
Yes. Yeah, I think it would be good if we had an event, because then people could show up and learn more. And then we would know who they are.
We're presuming that they would come to an event. I mean, maybe the preliminary thing would be to have an article and then see if there's an interest in an event.
Yeah, we could have like a learn more, you know, email to learn more. A Zoom event is so easy to host. Yes. Did somebody else want to say something?
I think it's a good idea to raise awareness and have an event. I personally wouldn't like to be the one responsible for making that happen. I like the idea of there being something in the paper announcing it. I wonder if it makes sense to have any interested parties, you know, they could certainly look at past Zooms of our meetings or our agendas, or, you know, what our accomplishments have been, or just to invite them to a live meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe an op-ed, an ad saying that, you know, preservation depends on you. There's a municipal function for preservation that is the Historical Commission and the Historic District Commission. You can participate, and I mean, I would be happy to arrange with the library to have an information session. I'm sure the library would be very pleased to host it virtually. And we can just talk about what different commissions do, talk about how to get involved, and see who shows up. Clement,
I think sorry, Clement, I think if you could get more commissions to put themselves out there and say, this is what we do, to explain themselves, not just this commission.
Oh, maybe have it be all the commissions.
Yeah, I would think that would be much more interesting. I remember they used to be in the paper, you know, learn how to volunteer or whatever, you know, how you go about it, what this commission does, what that commission does. I mean, maybe make it a broader base than just this commission. Because, you know, HDC does have, no, I don't want to, sorry, Angus. HDC is elected, and I think everybody understands that, but the volunteer aspect, I don't think everybody understands. So I don't want to organize, but maybe the first step is talking to Anne at the Athenaeum and seeing if she would be amenable, and thinking about what other commissions could be involved in this.
Yeah.
And a letter. I think everybody's reading the INM very carefully these days, since we have nothing else to do. So I think the INM is a great place to write a op-ed or something.
Yeah, I think that's just, Vince, you're still here. Do you think, you know, you're involved with some commissions?
Thank you. I'm just thinking about a slightly different point. I ran into this problem recently. When you're talking about putting something in the newspaper, it sounds like you're putting in something that's not a statutory ad. That has its own different and separate costs that the town won't bear. And the town doesn't have money for that kind of thing. When you're talking about a 3-inch by 5-inch piece, I found out recently that's $500. Unless someone from the committee or a friend wants to volunteer it, I can't see the town doing it. An op-ed is probably a better way to go, to be honest.
Yeah.
In terms of other committees' involvement and trying to get people on board in a pipeline, there's potential benefits in that. Maybe let's shop the idea around a little bit. I don't know where to go with it. I know there's, it's something that I could take to 1 or 2 people and see how it works out. Not sure where to take it, to be honest. There's 55 different town boards, committees and commissions. You can't just be selective. It would have to be all or just one or none. There's a lot of people to take into account with this. And there's even boards that only meet seasonally. I know I've already mentioned them once today. The non-voting taxpayers, effectively, they only meet for June, July and August, and then they go on break for 9 months. So how would you include them when they're not actively meeting at the moment? And what would it be like trying to post an agenda for so many people to attend one massive meeting like that? That would be the biggest posting I think the town would have ever seen.
Well, it doesn't have to be an open meeting unless there's a quorum of the commission. So, you know, we could have, so, you know, groups have, sorry, Vince, thank you for, I didn't mean to jump on one thing. Thank you for bringing up all the reasons why this might fail.
But not fail, logistics, just logistics.
To understand the logistics. But, you know, I'm just thinking about all the organizations that I've been involved with and how they have open houses. Like, you know, we had our child at a school where they were trying to get a lot of parent involvement, and they had many different ways that parents could get involved. And so they had an open house where everybody, all the parents could just come, and everybody had tables, talked about their different groups. So why couldn't the town host something like this where, you know, in a COVID world, it would be like everybody who wanted to come could come. It's opt-in, and you take 3 minutes, show your website, talk about what you do, have a virtual sign-up list, and then, you know, this is all about making it welcoming for people. So, and, you know, I guess we'd have to make sure that we didn't have a quorum speaking at the meeting. So, because the posting and everything is ridiculous, and I don't see why, you know, we don't need to deliberate at the meeting. So, so I think the timing should be April, because May is when the hearings start. Yeah, David has to go. David, thank you so much. Thank you for keeping the minutes. Is anybody opposed to my trying to organize something like this? No. Okay, so maybe we can put that on the March agenda. Great, I think we're done. Anything else? Angus? No.
Thank you, Hillary. I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Okay, thank you, Georgia. I'm gonna declare our meeting adjourned. I don't see anyone wanting to stay here anymore. Thank you so much, everybody. It's so good to see your faces. Dick, thanks for joining us and staying with us this whole time. Holly, thank you, and Vince as well. Bye-bye. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thanks,
Stay
Holly.
safe.